Good morning. I am Amanda, and I have a quick question for you. Quick poll. How many of you were very nervous about that video and the storm in the video? All right. And how many of you were nervous because the video doesn't have any audio? There's no sound in that video. Did that make you nervous? And how many of you are thinking, oh no, her video, I feel bad for her? Well, thank you for being my friends there. I appreciate all of you who are empathetic towards me in this. And today we are talking about anxiety. Now, many of you may have been just a little bit anxious because of this introductory video, but I want you to know I wasn't worried about the video. And the reason is because I made the video and I knew it didn't have any sound. Yes, it was on purpose to not have any sound in this video. And as we are continuing in our series today about mental health and Mental Health Month here at Grace Church, we are going to be talking about anxiety. Chances are that you know someone who deals with anxiety. And this is not just the kind of anxiety brought on by such a video, but clinically diagnosed anxiety is at an all-time high. It is on the rise, especially among teenagers and young adults. But not everyone feels anxious at a clinical level. Most of us, I think every one of us, has felt anxious at a non-clinical level at some point in our lives. Sometimes we just feel like something needs to be done. How can we come alongside people in our lives who are dealing with anxiety, who are feeling anxious? Well, hint, it's probably not playing like videos like this one at home. So today we're going to be talking about countering anxiety by being a non-anxious presence. Countering anxiety by being a non-anxious presence. See, family therapist Edwin Friedman coined the term non-anxious presence in one of his books, and just because a term isn't in the Bible doesn't mean that it's not a biblical concept. Today we're going to see how being a non-anxious presence is clearly seen in a passage that we're going to look at today. First, there are two important aspects to this concept of a non-anxious presence. The first one is being present. You have to be in the situation with someone who is anxious in order to be a non-anxious presence. You have to be there with them. If you're not in it, then you're not present. How would you bring presence if you're not present? The second part is that the person must be non-anxious. Non-anxious. That means that this person is going to remain calm no matter what happens. They remain calm even when everyone else is in a panic. It doesn't mean that you're not also affected by what's happening. It just means that you are able to keep it together during this chaos. In the midst of panic and chaos, they remain cool and calm. They assess the situation logically, holistically, and they offer perspectives and solutions that are both effective and helpful. How can we remain calm and present? Jesus is our model today as we are going to look into this idea of being a non-anxious presence. In Mark chapter 4, verses 35 to 41, we find Jesus and his disciples in a boat. They're in a boat, they're crossing a lake after a long day of teaching and ministering to people. The first thing that we're going to see in this passage is that Jesus' presence does not keep storms away. Read with me in Mark chapter 4, starting in verse 35. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let's go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. Well, this sounds like a crazy ride, a boat ride I'm not sure I want to get on. But Jesus has been in a boat all day long. See, he has been teaching people who are sitting on the shore. It's like a natural amphitheater. The hills are coming down toward the edge of the lake, and the people are sitting there, and Jesus is in a boat, and he's teaching the crowd from the boat. All the people are sitting on the shore listening to him. And at the end of the day, when he's all done teaching, instead of stepping off the boat into the crowd, he tells the disciples who are in the boat, "Let's just go across to the other side." So as Jesus has been teaching all day long, he is tired. He's tired. He's been teaching all day long. Who knows? He might have been out in the sun all this time. It is time for Jesus to take a nap. Now, the boat is going to be where Jesus is going to take this nap. And nap time on the boat seems like a great way to sleep off a long day. Just as Jesus drifts off to sleep, the waves and the wind begin. A gust of wind comes up and the waves begin to overpower the disciples at the oars. Now, what is this kind of boat like that they're in? You might have imagined a small boat or a very large boat. The kind of boat that they are in is about the size of a school bus. In 1986, the hull of a fishing boat like this one was recovered from the mud on the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee. It's about 5 miles south of Capernaum, a city that these disciples frequently go to. And the boat that they found was 26 and a half feet long, 7.5 feet wide, and 4.5 feet high. So this is about the same size if you think about sitting in a school bus, except it doesn't have a top. This boat that they found, it corresponds in design to another picture, a mosaic on a wall of a Galilean boat that's preserved just about a mile away from the place where this boat hull was located. And at this discovery site, there's also another mosaic, similar boat, similar style, another town close by. So the style of these boats seems like this is the way it was. Now, on the boat that they found, both the fore and the aft sections of the boat, they appear to have some kind of covering, like a deck that would cover on the ends. And underneath would be just the right place for a cushion, just the right place to be in the shade, a place maybe to take a nap. And that is where we find Jesus. In this boat, there would be 4 people rowing, 2 on each side. They would be pulling at the oars and moving them through the water. And if you can imagine the disciples and Jesus on this boat, they are working hard at the oars and trying to propel themselves across this lake and to the other side. Now imagine this boat with me, rolling in the wind and the waves. You can imagine being on a school bus and being moved. This is in the water, and the wind is pushing them side to side, and water is starting to get into the boat. There's 4 people rowing. The rest are tying things down or bailing out the water, and they all think they're about to die. And that might be true, actually. There's a reason that they found that hull at the bottom of that lake. There are storms on this lake all the time that are similar to this, that come with a big gust of wind and knock a boat off course. From the disciples' perspective, it seems that they are most likely going to die in this storm. They have been told to get across the lake, and they're also worried they might fail. Seth Godin tells a description of what non-clinical anxiety is. He says, non-clinical anxiety is experiencing failure in advance. Experiencing failure in advance. See, we worry about a future that we imagine that hasn't happened yet. It hasn't yet occurred, and we stop being able to function normally. We start worrying that some future outcome that is not guaranteed is going to take place, and then we stop being able to do things the way that we normally would. We begin to think illogically, or we begin to add on more things to worry about. We anticipate the next possible situation and then the next one. And this is non-clinical anxiety. And then we can also, in this anxious status, in this anxious state, we can become the source of other people's anxiety. You may have experienced this yourself. So you can imagine the tension on this boat right now. Peter's yelling at Andrew. Andrew's yelling back. James and John keep running into one another on their way back and forth from one end of the boat to the other. The waves are a real threat to these disciples. Now, our storms are usually metaphorical. Our storms usually are internal storms. Anxiety is usually from a perceived threat. Our first reaction is often to think that we are under attack, under physical attack, when we're not. But that's the kind of reaction that we have in anxiety. That threat sure feels real, though. And Jesus was right there in this boat with them. He's in the boat with them. Now, he's taken a nap. He's calm, and he's present. Yet the storm came anyway. See, similarly for us, a non-anxious presence does not keep storms of anxiety away. Sometimes, even a non-anxious presence can make our anxiety more obvious. What we see is that Jesus' presence doesn't keep storms away, and it doesn't keep anxiety away. In verse 38 here, the waves and the wind are blowing, and then in this verse, it tells us what Jesus is doing. In verse 38, but he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" Now, maybe I said that a little too calmly. Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? Seems a little bit more possible. They're in the middle of a storm. They are worried that their boat is going to capsize or sink under the weight of water that they've taken on. And they are waking up Jesus. Well, it's time to talk about triangles. I know, triangles. Triangles happen when we get someone else involved in our anxiety. When someone's feeling anxiety, they're feeling this tension. They're feeling this tension that they can't resolve themselves. And the more that they feel it, the more that they feel that they're being stretched beyond what they can handle. Sometimes when people feel anxious, the tension is just too much for them. They need to get someone else involved. Now, there are a couple of ways to do that that are healthy. The first one is venting. Venting is when you talk to someone about the problem who is not involved in the problem and not expected to solve the problem. Venting might be, an example might be when my daughter is anxious about a math test. When she gets anxious about a math test, she might call me and say, "Mom, I'm really worried. I'm going to fail this test. And then after I fail this test, I'm going to flunk out of school. I'm going to drop out. I'm going to move to South America. I'm going to teach English instead of getting the engineering degree that I'm currently going for." See, that is venting. She's not asking me to solve her problem. She's just telling me the anticipated outcome that she is concerned about. And that's a healthy way to talk about your anxiety. Another option that is also healthy is to get counsel. Counselors don't fix your problem. They don't fix or solve your problem, but they can help you figure out a different perspective on that problem, a different way to see the problem. As a trained and licensed counselor, a person who you go to can help you to take apart what is happening, to look at it from different perspectives, to anticipate possible solutions, or just see it from a different way. All of those things are healthy ways to get someone else involved in your anxiety. But triangling is not healthy. Triangling is when you're anxious and you feel this tension inside of you, and you decide that you're going to make someone else solve your problem for you. Your problem becomes someone else's problem. If the person who is hearing the problem is expected to solve the problem, then that is triangling. See, when someone tries to get you to be in this triangle, they want you to do something. Just like these disciples are trying to get Jesus to do something. Now, I remember once when I was away at college, I got a phone call from my mom. This was in the days where you had to sort of make a plan on what time you were going to talk. So my phone rings near me, and I have to go answer it. And I'm talking to my mom. My mom calls to ask me to help my brother. The reason is my brother is not doing his homework, and he's not listening to my mom. So she called me and asked me to tell him to do his homework. Sorry, Mom, that wasn't gonna work. No, my brother didn't have any good thing to say about that. He was mad at both me and my mom for trying to make that happen. See, triangling doesn't actually help. It doesn't help to get someone involved that you expect to solve your problem for you. Triangling just spreads anxiety. It spreads anxiety. And that's what the disciples are trying to do to Jesus. They're trying to wake him up and yell at him in the wind and the waves. "Don't you care about us?" They expect him to solve their problem. Anxiety often attempts to multiply anxiety. It often attempts to multiply anxiety. But emotionality, all of the outward expression of that anxiety, it depends on other people perpetuating that in order to persist. So a non-anxious presence, according to Friedman, is the best defense against anxiety. A non-anxious presence is the best defense against anxiety. Someone who connects in a healthy way with others by regulating their own anxiety and appearing to be calm, but staying present. That's what we need to do. But how do we do this? How do we not give in to this pressure to take on other people's anxiety? We don't give in to this mounting pressure to absorb the anxiety of another person by remaining calm. See, don't get triangled. If you remember whose problem this is, that it's not your problem, you don't have to solve the problem, you can allow them to vent and you can listen. You can offer some kind of counsel by looking at it from a different perspective. But don't get triangled. Don't get triangled. See, anxiety tells us that we should fight or flee. It wants us to either fight or run away. But a non-anxious presence is able to choose to not flee and not fight. A non-anxious presence does not keep anxiety away, but it can keep it from spreading. The third thing that we see in this passage is that Jesus' presence means the storm has to end. In verse 39, it says, "And he awoke, and he rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, 'Peace, be still.' And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. He said to them, 'Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?' And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, 'Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?'" Well, Jesus does not take on the anxiety of the disciples. He doesn't answer the question of, "Don't you care about us?" Can you imagine what it would be like if Jesus had accepted their demand that he enter into their anxiety triangle? Can you imagine Jesus being anxious? They would say, "Teacher, don't you care that we're about to drown?" And Jesus wakes up suddenly and startled to see himself in a storm and starts to panic and says, "I'm not supposed to die this way." It's ridiculous. Of course, Jesus isn't going to respond that way. If you've read any of the stories of Jesus, he never responds in such a way. Jesus is a non-anxious presence in this situation because he knows he won't die this way. He knows that's not the plan. The plan is to die on a cross, not in a boat. And because he's God in the flesh, he tells the wind and the waves to be silent, and they stop. Now, the Greek word here, it repeats itself. The word for stop, it repeats. So not just comes to a stop, but comes to a stop, like a full stop, a sudden, obvious stop. Now, that's Jesus. But what's our role in this situation? We can't calm a lake or still a storm, not on a lake and not in a person. We're not able to calm any kind of storm. Only God can do that. And that's the role of faith that Jesus mentions here. He's given them a little bit of a hard time. He's saying that they don't trust yet that he is God. They don't trust yet that he is God. And so they're worried about things that, like, maybe he doesn't care about them. Or maybe his plan won't work out. Or maybe he's just going to stay asleep. See, if they had realized that he was God, they would know that none of those things are true, that he does care for them, that his plan will work out, and that he is not asleep to their needs. When we trust that Jesus is God, our faith can make the waves of anxiety smaller, even if they don't go all the way away. So what can we do? We can keep ourselves calm by trusting that God can totally handle whatever might happen, whatever is happening around us or in people around us. We can ask him to calm that storm, the one that we can't control, the one that's inside someone else. We can ask him to calm that storm, and we can remain with the person till the end of the storm. We remain calm and present. And non-anxious present is present until the end of the storm. The storm that Jesus and the disciples passed through that evening, it was a physical reality. It was a literal storm with waves and wind that they couldn't control. And sometimes anxiety is caused by something tangible and real, like a storm. But most of the time, our storms of anxiety are internal. Being a non-anxious presence can be just what someone needs this week to calm the storm, to make it through their storm to the end. And we follow the example of Jesus when we remain calm and present in the storm. There's 3 practical ways that I want to leave you with that you can use next time that you are with someone who needs a non-anxious presence, someone who will be with them till the end of the storm. The first one is to acknowledge your own tension in this situation. When you are present in the situation, you will also feel tension. When you acknowledge that to yourself and realize, I'm feeling tense right now, then you are able to recognize what is happening. See, when someone else feels anxious, you might start to feel anxious too, because anxiety spreads. But if you acknowledge the tension that's within you, you can choose not to act on it. Choose not to act on that anxiety. The second thing that you can do is stay present with the person who is feeling anxious. Stay present. See, it's easy to relieve your own tension by leaving, by walking away or pushing them away. It's easy to relieve the tension within you by telling them to stop, to be quiet, get over it, something along those lines. It doesn't do anything to relieve their tension. It's a way you are trying to relieve your own tension. But instead, stay with the person who is feeling anxious. Stay with them and choose not to act on the tension. And the third thing is pray. Pray. See, you can't calm a storm, but you know someone who can. The way that we get help in our storm is to call out to Jesus. In an unvoiced prayer, when you are beside that person who is feeling anxious, not out loud necessarily, but just inside your own mind, pray to Jesus and ask Jesus to calm this storm, like he calmed the storm the boat was in. A non-anxious presence can't keep a storm away. It can't keep anxiety away, but we can remain calm and present till the end of the storm. When we do this, we reflect Jesus to the people around us, even people who are feeling anxious and worried, people who want to draw us in and make us solve the problem. We reflect Jesus when we stay calm and present. Remain calm and present in the storm this week. Let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you that you give us examples in your word of Jesus living through things that we also experience. Thank you for his example of how to live. Father, he is God, and we trust in that. We trust that he can calm the storm. Will you help us this week to remain calm and present? Amen. Next week, you will see the third installment of the Mental Health Month. See you then.